What's going on, everybody? This is Marty, and this vlog is one of those vlogs that I actually wanted to get out earlier during this 30-day challenge, just to kind of give you more background or that introductory kind of a vlog of my story. I guess I got caught up in so many other vlogs and the concepts and the ideas that I had on my mind. I just kind of rolled with those. But this story right here, I want to take you back just a little bit to kind of give you more perspective on me, just a little bit. When I was young, I actually had an incredible streak of luck, I guess you want to say it, and hand in hand with a little bit of hard work that I didn't even realize that I was doing, because I was very young when it all started. I think I mentioned in one of my previous vlogs that I told you that I got obsessed with music production, and electronic equipment when it relates to music itself. And I just dug in. I was completely obsessed with it. And it kind of tells a story about what this title is to this video right here. In that I dug in and I was obsessed to the point where it was just nonstop for me, day and night and day, relentless, over and over and over. When I was just a little kid, somewhere around the age of 12 is when I jumped into it. But I just became so immersed in it. I wanted to learn everything there was about music production, electronic equipments and keyboards and drum machines and microphones and everything associated with it at such a young age. And for me, I started playing the piano back when I think it was about 5 or 6 years old. So I'd been playing the piano for some time. So I had a level of skill that I think was a little different from the average child who took piano lessons and maybe stopped along the way. I never stopped. I just kept on going. And then at a young age, I kind of was introduced to the big band or the rock band concept, and I really took hold of that. My mother kind of pushed me in a way that she encouraged me to go out and collaborate and meet and just kind of hang out with other musicians, whether it was at the church or just other events in the school system and things of that nature. Well, this is where my story starts to take off. I was just barely a teenager when I just happened to meet some of the best musicians that I had ever encountered in my life personally, in person. So this was a new experience for me. Now, I had played in churches for a long time as a kid, and I met other musicians in the church, but I met some phenomenal musicians, one of which was a vocalist who, what I learned at that time at a very young age, something they referred to as perfect pitch. And then I met another young lady who also was a vocalist, and she had perfect pitch. And then I met a bass player and another keyboard player. And I just met these people, and then I learned that they were so talented that they had performed for like the presidential inauguration balls. They had performed for the Olympics band and so many other just incredible bands that only looked for the best musicians in America. And these people just happened to be a part of that. Now, I was a lot younger than them, so I was a little surprised when they actually took to me and said, wow, you're really skilled in programming music and engineering and mixing at such a young age. So they asked me if I would become a part of their band, which was an R&B/pop band. And I didn't know at that time if this was something I really wanted to do, but I said it's something different. And my mother told me, well, maybe this will keep you active with your electronics. Go ahead and join the band. So I joined the band as an early teenager as a keyboard player. And when it was time for us to go into studios, I was the one that was actually doing all of the programming of the music and the tracks and recording and sequencing and all of that kind of stuff. So they relied on me as a very young teenager in order to put this music together, to put out demos and things of that nature. And here's where this story really starts to excel. Now, here I am, a very young teenager, and the band is starting to take off. A lot of things happening that I really didn't understand. I was just along for the ride, and I was enjoying it because I was playing with some very talented musicians and some incredible vocalists. And we continued to play. Now, I was underage, but we actually started playing in a lot of clubs and a lot of bars and a lot of places that I actually should have been 21 or older to even get into these clubs. But because our band was just really hot at the time, we got booked at so many clubs, and this is where I started to get that performance experience on big stages, if you will, with large crowds and everything that's associated with, being in a band, like a rock band or an R&B band. But what happened with us was we actually entered a contest that was hosted by a radio station in Philadelphia, which Power 99. And it was kind of sort of like one of those battle of the bands kind of a concept, where you get a bunch of bands together and you go on a stage and you perform and you just battle each other. Well, this contest was a little different. This contest was basically for up and coming R&B bands that played in local venues across the country. Though we didn't realize the magnitude of the contest when we initially entered it, but it was a competition where we were performing and competing against bands all over the United States of America. Now, I don't want this story to be too long, so I'll just point out key moments throughout this whole process. This contest consisted of I think it was about 20,000 bands that were kind of broken up all across America into about 4 different regions: north, south, east, and west. And the way it initially started was we were submitting our CDs and a video performance of our band, and that's how we went through the elimination process. But to break it down, when we really started to advance in the contest, we noticed that when there were just a few hundred bands left, we were still one of the bands still standing. And this is when the actual band competition, or the battle of the bands, started to take place, where we actually had to go to different venues and actually battle bands on stage. And through that entire process, all of the bands battling, when it was down to just 4 bands, we had to fly out to Indianapolis and perform in the Hoosier Dome for one last final showdown of the battle. And to our surprise, we actually won that final contest. And this is where our lives changed dramatically. It was shortly after that when we received all kinds of contracts to do commercials, to do shows, and then Motown. That's right, Motown came knocking on our door and signed us to a record deal with Motown Records. Now, it was a little crazy at that time because I think there was a little confusion with the administration and the CEO with Motown, where Berry Gordy was actually selling the record label to Gerald Busby at the time. So there was a little sticky situation for us when we first signed to the record label. This is where my story takes off as a young teenager. Here I am signed to a major record label, and immediately we're out on the road now, traveling, we're touring, we're gigging, we're in the studios. And this is where I had the opportunity to learn so much, especially when it came to the engineering, the music production, and the songwriting aspect of the music industry. I had the opportunity to actually sit next to some of the hottest producers in the industry at that time, from Jimmy Jam to Terry Lewis, Scirocco, and a lot of other people that were contracted through Motown. And the performances were off the chain. We got to meet so many stars, from Luther Vandross, Anita Baker. The list just goes on and on. Boys to Men. We've worked in the studio with so many different people, and it was a tremendous time for us. And this is where I gained so much knowledge and so much experience. Not to mention, we made so much money with endorsements and being on tour. And then we went into the studio to produce our first single for our first album. It was just an incredible time for me as a young kid, as a teenager. I don't think there are many kids at that age that can say, I have been signed, or they were signed to a major record label and out touring. It's just a phenomenal experience to have gone through, and I am thankful that I had the opportunity to do that. Now, for us, it was kind of bittersweet because we were doing so much and we were working on our album, and then it just was a time where things started to slow down. And what we realized at that time was, I guess it was the band concept was getting a little old and outdated, and the industry was maybe looking for more boy bands, those groups that were coming up as young talents but without the actual band part of it. So we just kind of toughed it out for as long as we could. I even still have the actual Motown contract that we signed back in, I believe it was 1990, 1991, somewhere along the line there. I actually have the actual Motown contract as it is written. The interesting thing about that is when you sign to a major record label, there are so many rules and policies that go into place where they own you individually, they own you collectively, and everything you do is associated with the record label, and they get some type of percentage from it. Now, granted, we were making tons of money just by touring and doing other appearances and a host of promotional things. It was also getting a little difficult to try and stay with the label because of the direction that the industry was going in. And unfortunately for us, it was not going in the direction of bands on a stage. And there are a few bands that kind of survived this wave, like Mint Condition, and there's some other bands out there, some really good R&B bands that kind of made it through that wave of transition in the music industry. We, however, just kind of didn't stick together as far as trying to get through that particular wave and transition in the music industry. So this is where it got a little bumpy for us. Although the money again was good and we were still touring and everything, it's just that the record label wasn't promoting us as they were with some of their bigger acts that they were trying to push now, like Johnny Gill and New Edition and some other acts like that. So we just kind of got pushed to the side, and it just became a touring process for us, and I don't think it sat well with a lot of people in the group. And this is where we kind of just decided as a group that maybe we should just kind of maybe try to look for other opportunities with other record labels. So we hired an attorney from New York, and we discussed options to kind of get us out of this Motown recording deal. And it took about 3 years after being on the label for about 7 years, but we were finally allowed to be released from Motown. And we did have some other record labels that were interested in us, but it's just one of those things that it's just the bands just did not seem to kind of resurface and get a revitalization and take off. So we never actually got back to being signed with any kind of major label or anything like that. And it was at that point, that's when other things started to just take us in different directions. And we decided to just kind of disband and start to do our own things. And that is what led me into the whole educational process, where now, obviously, I think if you watch some of my previous videos where I discussed that I actually teach recording classes, I teach songwriting classes and some other technology classes at a university here. And this is that transition that kind of led me to where I am today, where I'm doing so much in the music industry with the recording arts. And of course, I picked up some other hobbies and interests along the way. I've been able to build a studio that I have, a personal recording studio, and so many other things that I've been doing recently. But this is where it all came from. This is where it really started for me. This is what kind of got my career jump-started at such a young age, being signed to a major record label. It was a big deal then, and to me, it still is a big deal to me. I don't know if you've been seeing, but right behind me, that album on the wall there represents the time that we were at Motown and the times that we were on the road, and represents the single that we did produce and we did release. So it was a good time for me, but that is what got me started. That is what landed me where I am now. And when I say that I've been in the industry or in the arts all of my life, and I'm doing what I enjoy doing and I love doing, this is where it all started. That was the big push that got me to the point I am now. And I've been in a good place ever since. And as far as I'm concerned, this is where I'm going to stay within the arts. So that's my story from Motown till now. And that's who I am. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Peace.